Thank you for being with us. This is the second part of the program, and it's slightly varied. My guest here is Dr. Joseph Licari, who was with us last week. He's former permanent secretary of permanent representative of the Council of Europe. Thank you very much for joining us once again. We carry on from where we left last week, and we're hearing a lot of different opinions about the sharp rise in COVID-19 this week. I refer to Dr. Daniels, who we spoke with last week, and I quote, he actually said, although we are seeing a lot of new cases, people don't seem to be getting so unwell. And that was Dr. Daniels, who's a consultant in intensive care, NHS Birmingham. So a lot of different opinions. Before we carry on with Dr. Licari, we're going to see a short feature. The first person is an interview with our tourism minister, Giulia Farrugia Portelli, and the BBC. And you can hear various opinions there. And then we carry on with another opinion from Lord Jonathan Sumption, a former Supreme Court judge who really is very anti-lockdown. So that's a very short feature, and we'll be with you soon.
Tourists in the coming weeks.
How can you be prepared when Britain or the UK has the worst level of infection rate in Europe?
We are pretty much geared up, even through our international network, even the mechanism that we have in our airport. We have the right mechanism at the airport to test each and every passenger through the temperature gauging mechanisms, but then of course we understand that also as a country we have a strong base when it comes to our healthcare system. Even Commonwealth General Secretary Patricia Scotland has applauded Malta, and they described the way that we handled the pandemic as the best country in the world for handling this situation. We, as a country, we're taking all the precautions. The precautions are in place, airport, hotels, also the many attractions that we have in Malta are all geared up. We have safety protocols in place. All the hotels, the restaurants, etc. are COVID tested. So that means that each and every traveler has peace of mind that each and every side of the corner of our country is practically safe.
Giulia, can I just check on some of the, you talked about some of the measures you're going to bring in. So when British tourists, if they're allowed to travel, when they arrive in Malta, you say they have a temperature check as they come in. So they go to a hotel, and as you will know, the temperature check is not definitive, it's a moment in time. So it is possible that someone could arrive in Malta, pass the temperature check into their hotel, and then fall ill in the hotel and be tested positive. What would happen in that hotel to all the other guests and the staff if that were to happen?
If that were to happen, and it's hypothetical, but we have the right protocols, the right mechanisms in place. So basically we have a protocol which states that each and every hotel which experiences this kind of situation, they will isolate them, that tourists, until the medical team comes into place. And then we have a fully-fledged health system wherein all the patients, all the tourists will be cared for in an appropriate manner.
How long would that period be for?
Pardon me?
How long would that period be for?
Basically, we're saying that each and every hotel has a direct line, a direct link to our health authorities, and basically that mechanism will go straight in action, and the team will start taking over and isolate that particular tourist. But of course, we are prepared.
What I'm advocating now is that the lockdown should become entirely voluntary. It is up to us, not the state, to decide what risks we are going to take with our own bodies. Now, the traditional answer that people give to that is, well, but by going out or in the streets and in shops and things, you are infecting other people. But you don't have to take that risk. You can voluntarily self-isolate. You don't have to go into the streets. You don't have to go to the shops. People who feel vulnerable can self-isolate, and the rest of us can then get on with our lives. We have never lived in a risk-free world, and we're never going to live in a risk-free world. We are going to have to live with COVID-19 because it's going to be around for a long time unless somebody successfully invents and trials a vaccine.
So
we might
may
as
I
well
ask you
get on
then,
with
what choice would you make in that entirely voluntary system that you're putting forward? What choice would you make for yourself and members of your household?
Well, I make my choices and other members of my household will make theirs. But my choice would be that I would live a perfectly normal life. If the pubs were open now, I would go to a crowded pub with no hesitation. If the theatres were open now, I would go to the theatre with no hesitation. Because this is, for the overwhelming majority of people with no serious underlying conditions, this is a very mild epidemic. In the Cabinet Office papers published with the National Risk Assessment, they have listed all the pandemics since 1918. The mortality of this one is right down the bottom, lower than any of the others.
That was a short feature, and we're going to carry on with Dr. Licari. However, we're joining our guest from Lebanon, and the reason we're interrupting our interview here is that the line is very bad. So we're going to have a look at what's happening in Lebanon right now. And we're joined by the president of the China Arab Association, Madame Ibrahim. Good evening, Madame Ibrahim.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. It's very heartbreaking what's happened, and I just wonder if you could give us an update of how things are developing.
Actually, it's a very sad story, and it happened suddenly. And as you know, I think Lebanon is in most of the people's mind. Okay, they think it's always a war. We passed the civic war, and we finished in the year of 1990. And then by the year of 2006, we have the war between Lebanon and Israel. And then after around 15 years, okay, we got this explosion. So this is very sadly. The moment when it happened, I was just having dinner with my husband, and suddenly I heard a big bomb, big explosion, and the floor under my feet, like waving up and down 2-3 times. I couldn't remember, and the wave, it's so high, and I thought in the beginning it was an earthquake, but suddenly I thought maybe because with the big sound, I thought maybe it's some bomb. But I felt it's so close to me because it's so huge, okay? And then after I check out, okay, I thought it was 500 meters away from my house, but actually it's 8 kilometers from my house.
How are you as a community providing support and solace to each other and the families of the victims?
You know, actually, the Chinese in Lebanon are not so huge. Okay, we have only 600 people. And now with the internet, we have a group. Okay, so everybody is in that group. When something happened, and everybody go that group and to post the news and ask everybody if it's in the safe. And the moment I sent a message to the group, and I received message also from the south of Beirut, from the east of Beirut. I'm living in the east north, okay? And everybody felt that, which is something really huge. It's not just me, and next to my house is whole Lebanon. And then we realized even in the northern city, Tripoli, and in the southern city, Saida, which is very far, it's around 1 hour by driving to Beirut. Also, they felt it. So, which means it's so huge.
And there are many homeless people right now. How is the situation being managed to give them support?
Yes, yesterday Yesterday I went to the place particular away from this warehouse exposure, and I see all the shops and the windows because it's the shop, and I see all the shops are changing their windows, and one of the shop is not anything. I did the interview. I said, how many years you work this shop? It's a 50 years.
It's a very bad line, I'm afraid. It's a very bad line. It's cutting off quite a lot because we can hardly hear you. But I hope to join you again very soon. I thank you for your time today, and God be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madame Ibrahim. Thank you. That's very sad. Do you think that was also a leadership problem?
In Lebanon?
That this happened, yes.
Well, Lebanon has been in a state of confusion for many, many years, including a civil war. But even before that, they have 3 large communities, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and they have a system of clans. Clans, coalitions, and everybody tries to make the best of the situation. Everybody looks at his group without looking at the nation state of Lebanon as such. That's the problem.
But I mean, it was very, unfortunate is an understatement. With COVID-19 and then this, it's just a big tragedy. And I hope that they find a lot of help from other governments around the world. I'd like to go back to our topic from last week. You've obviously seen the interviews that we shared. We spoke to Dr. Daniels last week, a lot of different opinions. What do you think about this sharp rise? I mean, you're obviously in Malta right now, but you're resident in Paris.
But look, I can speak about economics, and from the economic point of view, this pandemic has been a disaster. Just to measure the scale, it's enough to say that the US economy was in an economic boom for 11 years, creating jobs every year. Then last February, this virus came from China, it struck, and in 1 month, the US economy lost as many jobs as it had gained in 11 years. Destruction is easy and quick. Construction is difficult and takes time. Now we are still in the middle of the pandemic, but we have to start thinking of reconstruction. And
living with it, really. I mean, that's...
We're living with the pandemic, but we have to start thinking of the economy as it will be after the pandemic is over, and it will not be exactly as before.
Absolutely not. But I mean, what do you think? People mention another lockdown. I mean, I think that would be absolutely devastating.
It would be devastating because a lockdown means people not working. And if you're not working, you're not producing. And it would be an even bigger economic disaster, which is why it's necessary for all of us to make the sacrifice of obeying the instructions we are given by experts in the hope that we can avoid a second lockdown with the even major economic consequences, negative consequences that will follow. But we still have to think of the future because the economy will change. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing we have learned from this pandemic is that health, jobs, profits, life itself are more precarious than we used to think. and therefore we are going to be more careful even about consuming. We are likely to save more in the post-pandemic world, and saving more means putting a drag on the economy. And then we have to change our habits. One thing we learned is home delivery. Now, businesses which cannot deliver will be struggling. Many of us have learned to get films online. Many cinemas will be struggling. They will have competition. We have all learned how to work from home, teleworking, teleplaying, teleconferencing, and that means that electronic appliances will be more in demand. In fact, many of these large firms, electronic firms, have made a bigger profit in the pandemic than before. Amazon, for example, has increased its profits this year compared to last year. In the meantime, we have to switch our habits, use less transport, including public transport and including also transport. If you look at the airlines at the moment...
Yes, I was going to ask about the airlines.
The big airlines are in a disaster. They won't recover before 3 or 4 years' time.
I don't think, air travel will be the same again, not for a long time. We're speaking about air travel. I'd like to perhaps address tourism, especially for us. We're so dependent on tourism. What are your views about the future of tourism in Malta?
Good and bad. Good and bad is that around 6 years ago, let's say, most people in the richer European countries had enough by way of food, clothing, housing, so they wanted what used to be called luxuries. One of the luxuries was travel. Then there were many destinations, including Malta, which satisfied the demand by producing a competitive tourism product. But tourism remains volatile. It's not a necessity, it's not essential. Travel is still a bit of a luxury. As soon as there is a recession, it's one of the first things to be hit. And this is not a small recession, it's a major recession. So it goes without saying that tourism will be badly hit.
But what about all the large hotels, not on our island only, all around the world? What will become of those?
They have to wait and see. Well, it depends on how long a hotel can stay, having more costs than income. Many hotels are making a loss. In some countries, including Malta, they are getting government subsidies, but this cannot go on forever. Some hotels are part of chains, so they can resist for a long time. Others will fall by the wayside. So tourism will not be back to where it was in 2019 until 3 or 4 years' time, and the strong will survive. The weak will not.
Do you foresee many bankruptcies?
There are bound to be bankruptcies. There are bankruptcies all over the place in all countries. If a business cannot cope, it just has to go under, because it cannot get bank credit indefinitely.
Yes, but most businesses, although there may be a bankruptcy, the business may survive with a new owner.
With
a new owner, new ownership.
Yes, but is the owner prepared to bring the capital that is needed? No, it's going to mean many businesses will go bankrupt. Obviously, the weakest, because they have no capital or because they have no future. As I said, during the 3 worst months of the pandemic, April, May, June, Amazon, Facebook, some others have increased their profit from 1 year to the next. It's because they have the right products for the situation. Other hotels and other businesses can survive depending how deep their pockets are.
Mm-hmm. We spoke very briefly last time about the reversal of globalization. Perhaps you could expand a bit more, because we're short of time last time.
Okay, so globalization means a process whereby you move towards the whole globe becoming one market. It's only a process. We're not saying the whole globe is one market, but you remove as many as possible of the obstacles to trade. So international trade expands, good and bad. Good because everything is being produced where it costs less or least to produce. And that means economic growth, better for us consumers. It's bad because you become dependent on foreign countries. So we saw many firms in Europe not being stuck, not being able to go on because they were dependent on some products coming from China, and the products were not coming. So if I'm making cars and I have everything except a battery, then my car cannot be sold. So now the tendency will be, now that we have seen the disadvantages of international trade, there will be a tendency for what the Americans call reshoring, namely bringing production closer to home, either in the very same country or close by. For example, the Americans discovered during the pandemic that most of the antibiotics were being imported from China. It can't go on like this.
I think that's all over the world, really.
It can't go on like this. Agriculture was protected for many years because people were conscious of the fact that if there is a war, how do I feed my people? But now we have realized that war is not the only danger to survival, and agricultural goods, food, are not the only essential goods.
How do you think we can survive if, as you say, we see this process of reverse globalization?
We are part of a region called the European Union, so we don't have to bring everything from far away. The European Union itself is dependent, but we shall stockpiling, for example. Because of the pandemic, everybody has learned to keep more stocks of consumer goods, even businesses, of spare parts they need. So you're taking a precaution, you're saving more money, and you're saving more goods by way of stocks.
Finally, just finally, because we've come to the end of the program, can we be optimistic in some way?
We have to be optimistic, otherwise we'll drop dead. We have to go on working, go on being optimistic, hoping for the best in the medical field and subsequently in the economic field too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Licari. I am with Dr. Joseph Licari. I'll be back with you next Friday. Should you have any comments, as you always do send them to Net Television or myself, and we'll certainly address them during this program. I wish you a lovely weekend. Good night.